Hello, everyone. My name is Lafaya Mitchell, and welcome to the Lafaya Way Live. I'm so excited to have you here with me again. And remember that we're here every Saturday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, today we have with us the most fantastic Tasha Rollins. Now, Tasha, please introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about what it is you do.
Thank you so much for having me here today, Lafaya. It's such a joy to meet you. My name is Tasha Rollins. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I'm an autism mama. I specialize in autism. Um, I also host the Autism in Action podcast, and we wear a lot of hats. So,
Mhm,
yes.
mhm. Now, tell me a little bit about your children, especially your child on the spectrum, and how you got started doing what it is that you do.
So really, I have two older sons. They're 20 and 22, and I have a little one who's 8, who's not on the spectrum. But my oldest two that are on the spectrum were diagnosed in middle school and high school, so they had later diagnosis. And I didn't go to grad school to become a counselor till after I had my youngest son. So it's been quite a journey, and I've always been really big into advocacy with autism as a parent, with the schools and parents and whatnot. But really, that just kind of led me on my path into counseling to help other families just like mine.
Oh wow. Okay. So, what made you decide to get your to get your graduate degree after so many years? With your older boys.
Well, quite honestly, I felt the need to do that. I mean, resources are so scarce for families like ours. We're always in search of resources, services, and support, which is why I started the Autism in Action podcast to help other families connect those dots. Because unless you know someone that had that experience, it's been very hard to find.
Right.
Um, so really that was why, just to help families. I really felt the calling on my heart and felt like that was what I was supposed to do.
Okay, so you basically saw that there was a need and you
Hmm.
stepped in to say, okay, here's the way that I can fill that need. Right.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's exciting because I've been working or dealing with some super moms, over the past several weeks. And I'm excited about it because I'm like, and I think people tell me, oh, they told me I was a super mom. I was like, really? Because I was really just trying to figure out how to make sure that, things were, going in the right direction for my child. And then once I figured out that, there's sometimes not a lot that they know out there, then I wanted to make sure that a lot of people knew how to get what
Yes.
they needed,
Absolutely.
out there.
Absolutely.
Right. So now tell us a little bit about the services that you're offering right now to people, and just tell us all about your program.
Okay. So, well, with counseling in general or with the other programs?
The other programs.
Okay, so the Autism Therapist Network is something that we recently just launched, and we are super excited. We've got an upcoming virtual autism summit in October where we're going to bring together a lot of providers to help train licensed professional counselors and mental health specialists in feeling comfortable and confident and competent working with the autism population. Um, Research shows that only 2 out of 44 clinicians feel comfortable working with autism, and that creates a really big gap for accessible services. So we've got that going on, and then really, truthfully, just in between clients and working the counseling side of things, and then juggling launching the podcast. I mean, launching the network and juggling the podcast. So
Yeah, yep. That sounds like a crazy busy life, and
yes,
I mean, I definitely commend you because I know the life well. It's ridiculous. No, it's actually it's a wonderful kind of ridiculous though, because you're
yes, it
actually,
is.
we're living on purpose, right? This is
Right,
what kind of brought to us. It kind of brings out our gifting, and we wouldn't be able to exercise our gifting right any other way. Other than having had
absolutely.
our experiences. But now, tell the viewers a little bit about who you'll have on your summit, and what the plans are, because it sounds like it is a really big undertaking to try to train providers on how to feel more comfortable. What are some of the
Right.
things that you're going to be offering? What's some of the information you'll give to
Well,
us?
We've got 3 different categories that we're going to have different speakers lined up to talk and do presentations on. And we're going to have provider panels available for question and answer towards the end of each day. And it's broken down into competency, clinical skills, and community. So those are the 3 sections that we are going to incorporate. And really, I call that the autism algorithm. That's what I teach on in the Autism Therapist Network. That'll be an educational workshop curriculum that's available to members in the network.
Now, tell us a little bit more about the autism algorithm. Now, tell me, say it again. That was a mouthful.
The autism algorithm. Yes. I chose algorithm because it's constantly changing, right? We're all familiar with that on social media. We see it online in multiple social media platforms, and there are times where things just get missed, right? They get kicked out. Well, autism services are a lot like that, especially for families that are struggling to find them. Also with educational services available to clinicians. You might see a conference here, a summit there, but you don't really see anything that's really steady. And it's definitely not information I feel like we received in grad school.
Right. So. Oh my goodness. In grad school, I felt like I got maybe a blurb.
Yes.
Autism,
yes.
Right.
Yes.
It was insane.
Coming from it as a parent and a professional, I've got a little bit of a unique advantage to share that insight with other professionals.
Right. Okay. So, is there any particular curriculum that you work from? Have you worked towards developing maybe some of your own curriculum? Because I love
yes,
that.
This has been in creation since the beginning of the year. It is a 4-part curriculum that will be offered in the network, and it'll go through that. It'll expand a whole lot more. It'll give you in-depth tools to use to build your own toolkit to use in therapy and private practice with your clients. It'll give you free resources that you can tap into that you're probably not aware of that's there. So it's bringing about an awareness. This is a need that we have. We see the rise in autism prevalence continuing to go up. 1 in 54 right now. I think it was 1 in 68 prior to that. And the 1 in 54, interesting, it's based on the CDC data from 2016. It's now 2021. So it'll be interesting to see when they put out new research where that goes. But currently, the rates are 1 in 54.
Okay, 1 in 54. And now, why do you think there has been, now, of course, I kind of know, but why do you think there's been an increase in the diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder?
Well, I definitely feel it has a lot to do with the fact that we have families looking for help. We have people advocating for their children with the schools now, and it's becoming more known. There's a lot more research surfacing as to whereas 20 years ago when mine were little, you didn't hardly hear the word autism,
Right.
in a school setting. That was not something that was discussed, and now people are talking about it, and it's important to talk about it.
Okay, so now what are some of the signs or some of the things that parents should look out for, when there may be some testing that's, they may need to have their child diagnosed?
Definitely deficits in communication, right, with language and pragmatics. Definitely any kind of like repetitive behaviors, consistent stuff that happens in the family that you observe or that others observe at school. And then deficits in social interaction. I'll just give you an example. When my son in middle school, when we first started going to get testing and going to the doctor and stuff, he was eating lunch every day by himself for the half of a year, and no one reached out to me from the school to share that with me. The middle of the school year came up, and it came up in a meeting. I'm like, why didn't anybody say anything? That's a big sign, So yeah, those are definite things to watch out for.
Are there any things that sometimes people are surprised by when you give them, like the list of, hey, here are the symptoms to look out for? Is there anything that, people generally miss?
Well, I think a lot of times there's a lot of overshadowing with diagnoses because my oldest son, for example, he was diagnosed with oppositional dysfunctional defiant disorder and ODD and ADHD. But really, truthfully, when he had that ADOS testing and he had that psychological evaluation in high school, he also had autism. It just presented completely different. Both of my children on the spectrum, they are both on the spectrum, but they are completely different individuals, and they have completely different symptoms that come out because of the autism.
Right. Now speak a little bit to that, because see, this is where, sometimes people do get confused about the spectrum of
Mm-hmm.
autism spectrum disorder. What are
Yes.
some of the like really standout differences between your two sons?
Standout differences between them: communication, for sure. So
Mhm.
one wants a lot of communication. He needs that constant attention, or constant affirmation that he's doing a good job, or constant conversation. The other one wants to be in his room. He wants to isolate all the time.
Mhm.
We have to pull them out. Social functions are hard for both of them. That's generally speaking, it's a little more difficult. Noise. Um, my 20-year-old has an auditory processing disorder as well. And
Mhm.
so noise comes through a lot differently for him than what it does for my oldest son.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Mhm.
sensory overwhelm definitely,
Right. And
presents different.
that's where a lot of the confusion will come.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes parents, and this is something that I want you to just pay attention to, parents, if you have one child that's diagnosed on the spectrum and you have another child that there seems to be something going on, there seems to be, some things that seem a little bit, maybe different, or, you need to consider whether they are differently functioning or not.
Right.
That there's at least, and I always tell parents, if it's too tough to kind of, sometimes parents feel overwhelmed by having more than one child, diagnosed on the autism spectrum. So, I hear a lot of parents say, "Oh, I have one who's on the spectrum, and the other one is very ADHD." I hear that very, very often, and so because sometimes it's just, I think parents almost feel overwhelmed by it. It's not really
Yes.
anything to feel overwhelmed about. It's really important to just recognize what the needs are for your individual child, like you would any other, child who
Yes.
had, needs, right, that need to be addressed. If there are areas of struggle, then you address those. But I'm always cautioning parents, simply because you have one who functions a little differently than the other, if there are those social deficits, clear social deficits
Go
there.
get tested.
Yes, and you have
Yes.
to take it into consideration. And I know sometimes, there's a lot of, argument back and forth about the concepts of higher and lower functioning. And if people didn't make it a bad thing, because people have higher, in general, human beings, there are human beings that function at a higher level than others, right? And some at
Right.
equal
And
level than others, right?
when we do a diagnosis, it's given with a level 1, level 2, or level 3 category, and that goes from needing more support to not needing as much support. Still support there, but not as much.
Right.
So,
And
mhm.
but that's it. It's because it becomes so important, because the diagnosis piece, because the other child will often, the higher functioning child will often be left behind, right? Like they will have these deficits that never really get addressed, and even sometimes they're mistreated, because the parents are like, well, there's nothing really wrong with you. Here's your brother over here, who has these struggles, but then there's like a complete invalidation of the other
Right.
child's struggle. So that's something that I really try to push and help parents understand as well. If the traits are there, then we know that oftentimes there's some, genetics involved in that. Maybe not all
Yes.
the time, but most of the time, genetics involved in that. And it's important to at least make it a consideration. And if it's not a big deal, then don't make it a huge deal. You just, you acknowledge it for what it is, so that you
Right.
can get the proper assistance, right?
And I always tell my clients, a diagnosis is not a label.
Right.
It's not.
Right.
It's a set of symptoms. That's what it is. And
Yes.
that's what we're treating. And oftentimes, and this is a big part of the Autism Therapist Network, I think a lot of clinicians are hesitant to work with autism because of challenging behaviors that they're not trained in, or don't know how to facilitate accommodation for that in the therapy room. But all of the other dual diagnosis that go along with autism, generalized anxiety disorder, depression, ADHD, all of those very common ODD that we hear
Yes.
about, we are skilled in treating that and assessing for that and working with that. And that's really truthfully what we're doing when we're working with autism.
Right. The most important aspect is understanding that we're working with human beings,
Yes.
right? They may function differently, and there may be some areas of assistance that they require that maybe some don't, but it happens vice versa as well, right?
And all of that's considered neurodiversity.
Yes,
Depression's considered neurodiversity.
yes.
Generalized anxiety disorder and ADHD, all of that's considered neurodiversity. We
PTSD, right?
just do things different. We think differently, right? And
Mhm.
that's okay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, this is very good. I'm really, and oftentimes, some of those things that people will often miss is like, those trauma experiences. And then
Yes.
those who are neurodiverse, I would say that very often, okay, there is also a PTSD diagnosis in there because they have been mistreated for so many
Yes.
years, right? Because there's so much misunderstanding. So it's been traumatic just to be who they are. Right.
Right.
And so,
Right.
so there's a lot of that happening too. But that's why, we're out there doing the work that we do, because we want to make sure that people are learning more and more, so that there's more, focus on the strengths, more focus on,
Absolutely.
okay, here's another human being who has challenges in this area, and here's how we're going to deal with those, right? Just like you would anyone else. So, but
Right.
now tell us a little bit more, because you've been a little modest, about your book, Autism Unspoken Until Now.
Oh, thank you. I actually got it right here. Autism Unspoken Until Now. It's a collection of memoirs from moms to moms with children on the spectrum. And so there's a lot of words and wisdom and insight for moms just like me, to share with other parents. So,
Yes,
mhm.
yes. Okay, so now what would you say is the greatest benefit from reading your book?
Hope. There's always, always hope. And each chapter starts out with either a quote or a scripture or something inspirational that the parent really wanted to convey, to other moms.
Yeah.
So it really is. It's a wonderful collection of memoirs, and it's full of hope.
Man, isn't it nice to take an experience that a mom is having, and that it feels like isolation. It feels
Yes.
like it is like there's no one else in the world who's experiencing this. Like you're literally on Gilligan's
Yes.
Island, right? Like you're on that island by yourself. You know,
Yes.
and it's so nice to have. There's so many moms out there, and I'm sorry, and dads. I haven't
Yes.
met many dads, but moms, out there doing this work where they're like, you know what, there's a gap, and we're going to fill that gap. We're going to make sure that people understand out there. Especially I have had times where I'm like, man, if I'm dealing with this, given, I'm sure you've had the same, given the training and all that I've had, I can't imagine, what others are going through, and how, when they don't know that there are other resources out there, and just the
Yes.
falling through the cracks, we have to do something about that. But that is so exciting that you have, that you have. Now, how do people find your books?
Well, it's on Amazon. So just go search up Autism Unspoken Until Now, or you can search my name and you'll see it pop up on Amazon. Um, Something else that I wanted to mention too about parents, it is so important for you to reach out and find your autism tribe, because you need your parents to back your corner. You're going to need to borrow their strength or their hope when your hope's running low, or your strength or your energy's running low.
Yes.
And just encourage, that's a big part of taking care of yourself, is to stay connected with other people. It does give us energy. We can borrow energy from each other when we run
Right.
low. So I just want to encourage you to find your autism tribe, and if you need help with that, reach out. So
Yes,
ask.
yes.
Yes.
Most excellent. Thank you. See, now, parents, you heard that, right? Find your tribe. It's so important to have your support system in place, and it's very, very important to be around and get yourself around parents who understand what's going on with you in your life. It may not be exact, and I know sometimes when we're going through, we think that it's just us, because
Yes.
we're immersed in it, right? But and sometimes, even when you do, and I definitely want to encourage this, even when you do join yourself to a community, don't be shy about asking your questions, because, and I told my parents this all of the time, don't be shy about asking your questions, because your questions will help other parents.
Yes.
Either it's something that they thought of before, and maybe they aren't currently at that moment thinking about that, but when you bring it up, they're like, oh, yes, okay, I often wondered about that, right? Or another parent can hear it and say, oh, my goodness, okay, so it's not just me, or and different things like that. Or you get those parents who maybe have the children who are a little older, right? Like ours,
Yes.
my youngest is 17, and my oldest, I have a kid, is 29. So, but it's who can say, okay, you know what, I had the exact same experience, and this is what I did, and this is where they are now today. I just had a nice little friend meeting yesterday with a couple of friends of mine. They both have children on the spectrum, and we talked all night. And one I've been friends with forever, so she's known me since my daughter was born, and she remembers my daughter from when she was a baby little girl, screaming. She has sensory nightmare baby, so screaming all the time and all of that. And she was actually one of those, I'm not, I love you, my friend, but she was actually one of those she didn't have any children at that time, and she was like, oh my goodness, she seems like such a little brat, right? She's just so spoiled, and all these things. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it's not spoiled. She clearly, has sensory issues.
Yes.
Like, these things are like a car can drive by, and I'm talking about every muscle in her body would tense up as a little baby, and she'd scream, right? So I'm like, come on, guys. So like, this is clearly, not about being spoiled. And so, but my daughter's now 17, and the same friend who's now raising two children on the spectrum, she's looking at my daughter, and it gives her hope, because my daughter is so, my daughter can really, she can really, she can socialize. It's to a certain extent, right? When I'm there, it's much easier for her. And there's just certain ways that she can present. And my friend is like, oh my goodness, like she's so able to do things, and she's quirky, but she operates in her gifts, because there's always been that support. Those, okay, parents, those areas of hyper focus out there, okay, find the gifting in it. Okay, I understand that it might drive you crazy sometimes, but find the gifting in it, and make sure that you're working on that as a strength for them with balance, right? So we make this a good thing, and then add some balance to it. And then you can end up with like little artists, or little video game creators,
absolutely,
programmers, or those things that Google, they're out there looking for now. So remember to encourage those things while teaching, right? At
yes,
the same time, balance.
yes.
Okay.
And also for mental health professionals as well, find your mentors in the autism field, because we need more professionals. Our families need more service providers. If only 2 out of 44 mental health clinicians feel comfortable working with autism, that's a huge gap where there's a lot of families missing out on that could be available services for them.
Now, what resources can people, reach out to in order to find mentors and that kind of thing?
Well, definitely check out the new Autism Therapist Network for that. We are going to do peer clinical consultation groups where everybody can get together and work together. We are also going to offer the educational curriculum and meet and greet activities.
Wait. You went over that too quickly. I think people need to.
Okay.
You have your pens out. Okay. So now, please just repeat what it is that you're doing, because I want to make sure people don't miss this.
So the Autism Therapist Network is something that I've created, and we are going to be bringing therapists together into a network to learn how to feel confident and competent serving families and clients with autism. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have different educational workshops it's a 6-month membership. We're going to have different educational curriculum around the autism algorithm that I mentioned earlier, where we really just do that deep dive intensive study. We're also going to bring on experts, have some spotlight segments where you'll learn from different people. That's where the mentoring piece comes in. And have the peer clinical consultation groups where they're working one-on-one with each other, working in a group setting.
So did you hear all of that? Okay. So now where do they go? Like, where do they go to find these programs? Very important programs.
It's autismtherapistnetwork.com.
autismtherapistnetwork.com. LMFT.com, everybody. Make sure that you
Yes.
write that
Yes.
down and that you get yourself, kind of involved in learning more. Because even if you don't plan on doing a lot of work with children on the spectrum, then it's just important to be informed enough to be able to help others who may be
Yes.
out there doing the same. We at least want to be able to send them in the right direction, right?
Absolutely.
So that they're able to just be a little bit more competent, in their work
Absolutely.
with our children, right?
We've also got the Autism Therapist Facebook group where all of us can go in and have a conversation together. In there, you will find my Autism Tribe Guide for professionals. It gives you A to Z, any professional that you could possibly be establishing continuum of care or sending out referrals to or networking with to get referrals to your office. So,
Now, where do they find that on Facebook?
the Autism Therapist group.
The autism therapist group. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now if we were talking, links, would it be facebook.com/the
I think
autism
autism
therapist?
therapists. Mm-hmm.
Okay, the autism therapist. All right.
Just autism therapists.
Oh, so facebook.com/autism therapist.
Correct.
Okay?
Yes.
So very important for people like me who aren't tech savvy. Aren't tech savvy. I'm looking out for you.
I will definitely send you those links so we can share those for sure.
Okay. And now it's been most excellent, quite honestly, talking with you. I'm so excited about what it is that you're doing.
Thank
Now,
you.
is there any piece of advice that you want to leave parents with?
Number one advice, take care of yourselves, because once you run out of steam and you run out of energy, you're not going to be able to continue taking care of your loved ones. So in order to do that, it's not a luxury to take care of yourself, right? It's something that you have to do. It's no different than drinking water, eating 3 times a day, getting exercise. If that means you have to get up an hour early, get up an hour early. But if that means you stay up an hour later, stay up an hour later. But whatever you have to do to at least have 60 minutes of self-care in a day, that's so, so important. I don't know if you know this, but there's a research study, I think it's out of the University of Madison, Wisconsin, that shows that parents with children on the autism spectrum, they have the same cortisol levels, the same stress as that compared to a combat veteran. And
Yes.
the only way to offset a spike in cortisol with your nervous system is to increase your dopamine. And
Yes.
dopamine comes from 3 things. It comes from rest, it comes from play, and it comes from connection with other people.
Yes.
And all of that's something with self-care that you need to do.
Okay, say those 3 again. It comes from increased dopamine
Rest,
vibe.
play,
Mm-hmm.
and connection.
Yes, yes. So guys, you hear that? That's like I'm always talking about self-care. That's like my number one. You cannot give what you don't give to yourself.
No.
So if you don't, you have to kind of think of it as if you don't fill up your own cup, you won't have that enough to kind of have it overflow and be of great benefit to others. And you want to bring your best, which you always are, right? But if our best is only 20% of us, now that's all we have left, maybe sometimes 10 or 5, right? Because we've just kind of let everything kind of pour out.
Yes.
Right. And then there's guilt. There's so many things that come along with that because we know that we're not able to bring
right.
100%. So
right.
I am so excited, Tasha, about what it is that you're doing. Thank you so much for coming to join me today. And thank you for the work it is that you are doing right now. I'm so excited. I think you're going to be joining the roundtable as well next week. Is that right? Did I just put you on the spot? And I'm wrong?
I don't know what that is. Yes.
No, okay, well, put you on the spot.
Yes.
Sorry. I'm excited. Well, I'm excited about talking to you, and I think maybe we'll give you an invite after this is over with, if you have time.
Absolutely, yes.
But yeah, man, you guys check her out. Check her website out. Check out the Facebook community. Get the support that you need. Even I encourage professionals like teachers and so on and so forth to also engage, because there's so much benefit that you can get from programs like theirs. All right, everybody, thank you for joining us today. My 30 minutes is up. I didn't even get in trouble by my timekeeper today. I appreciate you joining us. I hope you were able to gain something from what it is we talked about today. Until next time, stay you and stay true. Have a good one.